All right, so folks, it's official. I told you this was coming. I told you this was coming down the pipeline. Told you, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, that this was on its way. The Supreme Court has supposedly voted on whether or not to keep Roe v. Wade, and they have voted to overturn it. This is according to a leaked majority opinion from SCOTUS. We don't know where it came from, but it is published in Politico, and we're going to be going over this report and talk a little bit more about what it means, especially for the upcoming midterms. And unfortunately, as you might guess, not very good news. Not very good news at all. Okay. Here we go. Yep, here is Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights. Draft opinion shows. This is a quote from Justice Alito. "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled." This is circulated from inside the court. Let's take a look. Okay. This is some reporting by Josh Gerstein and Alexander Ward for Politico. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision according to initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico. The draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that largely maintained the right. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. "We hold that Roe and Casey must both be overruled," he writes in the document, labeled as the opinion of the court. "It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." Essentially meaning that they are going to undo Roe v. Wade, undo Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and it will be up to individual states to determine the degree to which they will allow abortions. Now, what this will mean for states like New York and California, probably not much. What this does mean for places like Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, etc., it's going to be devastating. It's going to be devastating for hundreds of thousands of women. Yeah, it's just reappropriating states' rights for the modern age. Now, we'll keep going here. Deliberations on controversial cases have in the past been fluid. Justices can and sometimes do change their votes as draft opinions circulate, and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote trading, sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next 2 months. So, again, they've already voted on it, but the Supreme Court can also change votes before they publish their final opinion. So keep that in mind as we go forward, but this is not a good sign of where things are going in a heavily conservative-leaning Supreme Court. Yeah, they won't, probably. Okay. The immediate impact of the ruling, as drafted in February, would be to end a half-century guarantee of federal legal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. It is unclear if there have been subsequent changes to the draft. No draft decision in modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. The unprecedented revelation is bound to intensify the debate over what was already the most controversial case on the docket this term. The draft opinion offers an extraordinary window into the justices' deliberations in one of the most consequential cases before the court in the last 5 decades. Some court watchers predicted that the conservative majority would slice away at abortion rights without flatly overturning a 49-year-old precedent. The draft shows that the court is looking to reject Roe's logic and legal protections outright. Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to read you this quote, okay? I'm going to read you this quote from the initial draft by Samuel Alito, okay? Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. So, when we're talking about abortion rights, this is one of the major issues that I think really shows how weak Democrats are. Keep in mind, Democrats still hold a majority of seats in Congress. They hold the ability to pass laws. They could be trying to push for protections for Roe, for abortion. They could be pushing for abortion rights. They could have been doing that under Obama, under Clinton, etc., to make sure that this is all like codified in law, not just in the courts, but in the legal laws that have been passed. But they didn't. Because their assumptions were, well, the courts will take care of it for us. We don't want to take any risks with our policy making. We don't want to actually make sure that protections are passed for these people. And because, frankly, the inflamed debate and deepened division that Roe and Casey have inflamed, according to Samuel Alito, well, those are political benefits to both the right and the left in this case. These are things that can be campaigned on without offering constituents any material support whatsoever. You know? This is an issue, which is why several months ago, I predicted that, before the midterms, there was going to be an overturning of Roe v. Wade, and that would then lead to essentially Democrats being like, hey, we don't have to offer you anything. We don't have to offer you shit. Because you know what? All we gotta do is say that we'll protect abortion if you vote us in. That's the only thing they have to run on. It's the only thing. Look at that other guy. He's terrible. Also, I'll protect abortion rights. That's all they have to run on. Politico's reporting goes on. A person familiar with the court's deliberations said that that 4 of the other Republican-appointed justices, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, have voted with Alito in the conference held among the justices after hearing oral arguments in December, and that lineup remains unchanged as of this week. So, from December of last year until now, like 6 months, they have not changed their votes at all, which is not boding well for the possibility of them changing their votes going forward. Okay? Now it continues. The 3 Democratic-appointed justices, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, are working on one or more dissents, according to the person who spoke under conditions of anonymity. How Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote and whether he will join an already written opinion or draft his own is unclear. Now, I do want to say another aspect of this that often gets overlooked in talks about Roe v. Wade is that Roe v. Wade, while unambiguously good, in my opinion, was was argued in a very strange way to protect abortion rights, using basically an appeal to like privacy and medical privacy. So the argumentation in Roe v. Wade is not as clear and as direct as many people might think it is. Yeah, exactly, Person Merson. It's messy and, like, not great in a legal way, but the outcome has been really, really good. Which is why it's kind of shocking in the past 50 years there hasn't been legislation to, like, explicitly make it the letter of the law, you know? So keep that in mind, that to some of the people on the court, most of the Republicans, obviously, they're going to have arguments that are much more based in law than we might typically expect from a case like this. There's a lot of wiggle room to argue that Roe v. Wade might have, like, overstepped its, like, the actual argument, I guess. Yeah, exactly. So, it's always been precarious. And it's just that now Republicans have finally gotten a majority on the court and are able to finally take this down. This was always what was going to happen if Republicans dominated the Supreme Court. And Democrats were just kind of, it's fine. We'll handle it. It's okay. You know, and it's not fine. It's not okay. Especially when Mitch McConnell literally stole a Supreme Court seat from Democrats, from the left. And that was just allowed to slide. Remember when that happened? It's crazy. Yeah, we can't count on Democrats for shit. Which is why we should be organizing in our unions, in our communities, etc. By all means, go and vote, organize for progressive candidates, but we cannot rely on establishment Democrats to step up and hold the line on any of these issues. Wasn't the judge a Republican, though? No, he was just a very middle-of-the-road liberal. Okay, we're gonna keep going here. The document, labeled as a first draft of the majority opinion, includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th. If the Alito draft is adopted, it would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over the state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. A Supreme Court spokesman declined to comment or make another representative of the court available to answer questions about the draft document. Politico received the copy of the draft opinion from a person familiar with the court's proceedings in the Mississippi case, along with other details supporting the authenticity of the document. The draft opinion runs 98 pages, including a 31-page appendix of historical state abortion laws. The document is replete with citations to previous court decisions, books, and other authorities, and includes 118 footnotes. The appearances and timing of this draft are consistent with court practice. The disclosure of Alito's draft majority opinion, a rare breach of Supreme Court secrecy and tradition around its deliberations, comes as all sides in the abortion debate are girding for the ruling. Speculation about the looming decision has been intense since the December oral arguments indicated a majority was inclined to support the Mississippi law. Yeah, this has been, the oral arguments were made in December, Person Merson. They've just been taking their sweet ass time with this. Under long-standing court procedures, justices hold preliminary votes on cases shortly after argument and assign a number of the majority to write a draft of the court's opinion. The draft is often amended in consultation with other justices, and in some cases the justices change their votes altogether, creating the possibility that the current alignment on Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization could change. The Chief Justice typically assigns majority opinions when he is in the majority. When he is not, that decision is typically made by the most senior justice in the majority. Oh no, the Dr. B's, these people know exactly how the world is run. They are just running it in a way that is only beneficial to themselves. A George W. Bush appointee who joined the court in 2006, Samuel Alito, argues that the 1973 abortion rights ruling was an ill-conceived and deeply flawed decision that invented a right mentioned nowhere in the Constitution and unwisely sought to wrench the contentious issue away from the political branches of government. Alito's draft ruling would overturn a decision by the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that found the Mississippi law ran afoul of Supreme Court precedent by seeking to effectively ban abortions before viability. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect, Alito continues, adding that its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and that the original decision has had damaging consequences. And this is one of his closing remarks in the opinion. The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions, which is bullshit. Are we talking about Roe v. Wade being overturned now? Yes, that's what we've been talking about the entire time. To Dr. B's, they're already doing that. Tennessee just made a new form of marriage that gay people can't have in the state. Florida has portrayed queer teachers as grooming pedophiles who are damaging to children if they mention anything other than heterosexuality in the classroom from kindergarten to 3rd grade. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Obergefell also went to this Supreme Court. We haven't lost yet. My guess is that establishment Dems are planning a wide run in 2022 and 2024, focusing specifically on codifying abortion rights into law. But, like, that's going to be the only thing they run on. Kind of like when they ran on Trump bad, and it did okay for them. These people in office are fucking insane. That's modern conservatism for you, okay? Modern conservatism is leaning more and more into the fascist tradition. And that's not me being hyperbolic. Part of my educational background is in history. So I feel pretty confident in saying this. I would like to continue using the right bathroom at work, and I probably won't be able to with my current birth certificate if they keep changing their shit. Yeah. Literally something a libertarian said to me about abortion laws being stripped. Not all libertarians are for or against abortion, and generally they don't care either way. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, bud. Which part of history? Most of my studies were in, like, medieval history, but I also did quite a bit on, like, World War II, and, I don't know, talking about current-day politics has led me to delve much more into the history of, fascist, societies, for obvious reasons. Why do they want to put people with wombs at risk for back-alley abortions? Because they want to control people with wombs. That is fundamentally it. They talk about how much they care about the unborn. The reality is they don't give a fuck about the unborn. The only people who actually give a fuck about the unborn are, in conservative circles, are the people who are, like, bombing abortion clinics, okay? If you actually believed that abortion clinics were genocide factories, you would violently take up arms against them. Most conservatives don't believe this, and they don't act like they believe it. It's simply a cudgel to control women, and it is... Correction, their goal is to control anyone who isn't a cis white male. Well, Ki Banui, let me correct myself. That's why I said they want to control people with wombs. They want to control other people too, but the reason they go after abortion is to control people with wombs. What about the righties running pregnancy crisis centers? We've definitely talked about that. They're pretty shit. These are the results of what overturning Roe v. Wade would be, right? Immediately stricter limits on abortion rights across the South and Midwest. About half the states set to immediately, with about half of the states set to immediately impose broad abortion bans. Any state could still legally allow the procedure, however. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion, the draft concludes. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. So, yeah, it would almost immediately kill abortion rights in like half the country. Yeah, Samuel Alito has had a really negative view on Roe v. Wade for a long time. Seemingly almost specifically because of how messy it is legally. You're talking like 34 states? Yeah. Which, I need to remind you guys, there is a really troubling grassroots groundswell of fascist support across the United States that are putting conservatives in charge of state Senate seats, governorships, etc. And kicking this to the states could see even ostensibly blue states on the national level imposing stricter abortion laws within their own states. It's going to be very messy, and it's going to be something that immediately catalyzes a lot of people on the left into action, which is something that, admittedly, those of us on the left who want to see more progressive change can make good use of. It'll wake a lot of people up, but it's also going to foment a lot of incendiary conservative Christian fascist folks to get more bold, get more violent, and we could see a lot of really, really ugly shit coming down the pipeline. Also, in this opinion, Samuel Alito writes, Roe expressed the feeling that the 14th Amendment was the provision that did the work, but its message seemed to be that abortion right could be found somewhere in the Constitution, and that specifying its exact location was not of paramount importance, Alito writes. Alito then declares that one of the central tenets of Roe, the viability distinction between fetuses not capable of living outside the womb and those who can, makes no sense. Meaning, by the way, that if you have a miscarriage, if you aren't holding a baby to term, you aren't holding that unborn child all the way until your body gives birth. If something happens to that baby, you could legally be held accountable for murder, by the way. He also describes doctors and nurses who terminate these pregnancies as abortionists, which is loaded language going back to the 70s. Oh, geez. Okay, wait a minute. Alito's use of the phrase egregiously wrong to describe Roe echoes language Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart used in December in defending his state's ban on abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The phrase was also contained in an opinion Kavanaugh wrote as part of a 2020 ruling that jury convictions in criminal cases must be unanimous. In that opinion, Kavanaugh labeled two well-known Supreme Court decisions as egregiously wrong when decided. The 1944 ruling upholding the detention of Japanese Americans during World War II, Korematsu versus United States, and the 1896 decision that blessed racial segregation under the rubric of separate but equal, Plessy v. Ferguson. So, fuck. So guys, this is scary. This is scary shit. Essentially, Plessy v. Ferguson is what codified Jim Crow. The Korematsu versus United States is what allowed for the internment camps of Japanese Americans. And by the way, the Supreme Court has never formally overturned the ruling that allowed for the internment camps to be created. Just in case you thought that was the case. It has never, since 1944, been overturned. It was repudiated in 2018, but it didn't actually overturn it. It was just like, oh, that was a bad thing we did, but it's still legal. Yeah. So, legacy of Plessy v. Ferguson, we'll go over this here. Plessy remained the law of the land for nearly 6 decades until the court overturned it with Brown versus Board of Education, school desegregation ruling in 1954. Quoting Kavanaugh, Alito writes about Plessy v. Ferguson, "It was egregiously wrong on the day it was decided." So now we have Kavanaugh and Samuel Alito saying that Plessy v. Ferguson was egregiously wrong. Okay? What about Coney Barrett? She hasn't been brought up yet, but she did vote in favor of restricting abortion. Alito's draft opinion includes in small type a list of about 2 pages worth of decisions in which the justices overruled prior precedents, in many instances reaching results praised by liberals. The implication that allowing states to outlaw abortion is on par with ending legal racial segregation has been hotly disputed. But the comparison underscores the conservative justice belief that Roe is so flawed that the justices should disregard their usual hesitations about overturning precedent and wholeheartedly renounce it. So basically, what they're doing by calling Plessy v. Ferguson egregiously wrong is saying, see, it was egregiously wrong and then we overturned it with Brown versus Board of Education, and that was good. But, this is gonna be just like that, okay? It's gonna be just like that. The overturning abortion, yeah, the abortion rights were bad. So we're gonna overturn that and it's gonna be good. That's essentially what he's trying to argue. As in Brown versus Board overturning Plessy? Yes. Brown versus Plessy v. Ferguson is essentially what established separate but equal. So obviously, Brown v. Board of Education didn't fix everything, clearly, but it did overrule that previous precedent that had been set by Plessy v. Ferguson. Alito's draft opinion ventures even further into this racially sensitive territory by observing in a footnote that some early proponents of abortion rights were also had unsavory views in favor of eugenics. Oh boy. Fun fact, y'all. Did you know that you can be in favor of abortion and also not in favor of eugenics? These are not two ideas that intrinsically link together. Did you already talk about how they could overturn Loving v. Virginia? No. Frankly, I would argue most conservatives are in favor of some form of eugenics. They're in favor of outlawing interracial marriage. They are in favor of IQ tests as like a reasonable or standardized testing. But by the way, standardized testing is quite literally born of the eugenics movement. So just keep that in mind. Here's another quote from Alito. Some such supporters have been motivated by a desire to suppress the size of the African American population, Alito writes. It is beyond dispute that Roe has had that demographic effect. A highly disproportionate percentage of aborted fetuses are black. Gee whiz. I wonder if we looked at the reasons why that might be. It might come down to the historical inequities brought on by things like slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, not having voting rights, disproportionate imprisonment, loopholes in the 14th Amendment. Yeah, a lot of things might be contributing to the reason why black individuals disproportionately get abortions. 13th Amendment. I need to watch the documentary again. Look, I didn't study numbers. I didn't study your fancy numbers. I studied words. While you were doing basic math, I studied the dictionary. Alito writes that by raising the point, he isn't casting aspersions on anyone. For our part, we do not question the motives of either those who have supported or those who have opposed laws restricting abortion. But he does bring it up, so that's pretty weird to say after that. Alito also addresses concern about the impact the decision could have on public discourse. We cannot allow our decisions to be affected by any extraneous influences such as concern about the public's reaction to our work, Alito writes. We do not pretend to know how our political system or society will respond to today's decision overruling Roe and Casey, and even if we could foresee what will happen, we would have no authority to let that knowledge influence our decision. In the main opinion in the 1992 Casey decision, Justices Sandra Day O'Connor, Anthony Kennedy, and Davis Souter warned that the court would pay a terrible price for overturning Roe, despite criticism that the decision from some in the public and the legal community. By the way, I do want to point out, again, Joe Biden could pack the court and prevent this from happening. But that would require a spine. That would require an establishment Democrat to have a spine and the actual motivation to do political maneuvering. Will he? No. No, he won't. Not even he wouldn't lift a pinky in that direction. While it has engendered disapproval, it has not been unworkable, the three justices wrote then. An entire generation has come of age free to assume Roe's concept of liberty in defining the capacity of women to act in society, and to make reproductive decisions. No erosion of principle going to liberty or personal autonomy has left Roe's central holding a doctrinal remnant. When Dobbs was argued in December, Roberts seemed out of sync with the other conservative justices, as he had been in a number of cases, including one challenging the Affordable Care Act. At the argument session last fall, Roberts seemed to be searching for a way to uphold Mississippi's 15-week ban without completely abandoning the Roe framework. Let's see. Roberts asked during the arguments, viability, it seems to me, doesn't have anything to do with choice. But if it really is an issue about choice, why is 15 weeks not enough time? The thing that is at issue before us today is 15 weeks. Oh, fuck. Okay, well, Alito's document goes over making, I guess, gestures towards his other Supreme Court nominees on the conservative side. Oh my god. Yeah, okay. One passage of Alito's opinion argues that the social attitudes of out-of-wedlock pregnancies have changed drastically since the 1970s, and that increased demand for adoption makes abortion less necessary. Go fuck yourself, dude. Go fuck yourself. The state should not have the right to force women to carry an entity in their body for 9 months. Jesus. Those points dovetail with issues that Barrett, a Trump appointee and the court's newest member, raised at the December arguments. She suggested laws allowing people to surrender newborn babies on a no questions asked basis, meaning carrying a pregnancy to term doesn't oblige one to engage in child rearing. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, conservatives literally try to make kids less adoptable. Conservative policies make kids less likely to be adopted because they preclude gay and trans people from adopting kids. But on top of that, I'm sorry, you want to institute a policy where newborn babies can just be like tossed around, no questions asked. Again, I'm gonna read this sentence again, just to really emphasize it to you. She suggested laws allowing people to surrender newborn babies on a no questions asked basis, which I feel like opens the door for a lot of really unsavory practices going on here. But also, the sentence continues, these laws mean carrying a pregnancy to term doesn't oblige one to engage in child rearing. But the issue isn't just the child rearing, it's the carrying a pregnancy to term that is the issue. Forcing someone to undergo that horrific body process is monstrous. Like, oh, I'm sorry. You've been infected by an alien parasite. We're gonna have to let it burst out of your chest, and then you won't have to worry about the child rearing. Sure, it might kill you, and in our healthcare system, it's far more likely to kill you than other healthcare systems. But you gotta carry it to term, and then we'll take care of the rest. The rest isn't even necessarily the issue. It was the first part that was the issue. And why don't the safe haven laws take care of that problem? Asked Barrett, who adopted 2 of her 7 children. That is a lot of kids. Much of Alito's draft is devoted to arguing that widespread criminalization of abortion during the 19th and early 20th century belies the notion that a right to abortion is implied in the Constitution. The conservative justice attached to his draft a 31-page appendix listing laws passed to criminalize abortion during that period. Alito claims an unbroken tradition of prohibiting abortion on pain of criminal punishment from the earliest days of common law until 1973, which is, I'm sorry, not accurate. There definitely was... Guys, fun fact for you, in the 1920s, it was really easy to get an abortion, okay? It was really easy to get an abortion in the 1920s and earlier than that. The fucking Bible has step-by-step instructions on how to do an abortion, okay? The idea that, oh yeah, it's just always been illegal, don't worry about it. That's not true. It's just not true. Until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. Zero, none, no state constitutional provision had recognized such a right, Alito adds. Alito's draft argues, again, this is like someone saying, well, up until we had the Chinese Exclusion Act, we didn't have any borders, so we shouldn't have any border enforcement. That's the quality of his argument right here. That's the quality of his argument. There were some pretty prominent abortionists at the time who would perform abortions pretty safely and with training. But yeah, obviously, if you were in the middle of nowhere and went for a back alley abortion, it was a risky thing. Alito's draft argues that and that's the thing, Sor Existo. we're going to see a lot more people die from abortion attempts. We're also going to see a lot more women going to jail, convicted of murder, because they got an abortion, or because they had a miscarriage that got labeled as their fault. We're already seeing this right now in the United States without Roe v. Wade being overturned. Yeah, it's going to be a huge boon to the private prison industry. Alito's draft argues that rights protected by the Constitution but not explicitly mentioned in it, so-called unenumerated rights, must be strongly rooted in U.S. history and tradition. That form of analysis seems at odds with several of the court's recent decisions, including many of its rulings blocking gay rights. True! It's almost like members of the court are ideological agents and not necessarily unbiased or objective in their evaluation of the law. Crazy. Do you think we'll see uterine flight from anti-abortion states? I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think most people in the United States don't have the money to just move to another state. Most people in the United States didn't have the money to do that before COVID. They sure as shit don't have the money to do it now. We emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right, Alito writes. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Which, okay, okay, all right, sure. Alito's draft opinion also rejects the idea that abortion bans reflect the subjugation of women in American society. Oh my god. God, this is the most condescending thing I've ever seen written by the Supreme Court. Women are not without electoral or political power, he writes. The percentage of women who register to vote and cast ballots is consistently higher than the percentage of men who do so. Basically just saying, well, women have electoral and political power, so therefore, abortion bans couldn't possibly subjugate women. Yeah, it's literally just a conservative arguing, oh, you want to have abortion rights? Just vote harder, sweaty. The article I pulled this from has stated they can't verify the authenticity of this draft. Politico seems to have multiple anonymous sources that are verifying this document. The justices held their final arguments of the current term on Wednesday. The court has set a series of sessions over the next 2 months to release rulings in still unresolved cases, including the Mississippi abortion case. So we will see the finalized opinion and decision come out sometime in the next 2 months. We should know sometime in July at the latest. So that'll give Democrats at least like 2 or 3 months to really ramp up their campaigns for the 2022 midterms. I mean, Politico is usually a fairly reliable source when it comes to like insider stuff like this. Mithril Mist, I'm mauling just thinking about that. There's a talking head over on Anderson Cooper lamenting the leak of this opinion as damaging the court. Oh, won't somebody think of the poor judges? Won't somebody think of the millions of women in this country who are going to be hurt by this decision? Imagine the state forcing you to undergo like horrific bodily changes to create a being that you don't even want in your body in the first place. Again, this is the state strapping women down to give birth. It's sick. Where the so-called libertarians raging about government intrusion into women's bodies. I don't know. Maybe we can maybe we can get a good libertarian take. You know what? Let's go check out noted libertarian. The most libertarian man I know.
All people
it's probably not going to be released until tomorrow. Let's listen to him talk about the number one problem with feminism, though.
The left destroyed traditional mores with regard to relations between the sexes. The original idea was that men were supposed to act with honor and chivalry in protecting women, and women were supposed to look for example, relationships just as men were. Sexual activity was supposed to be confined, this was at least the ideal, was supposed to be confined to committed relationships, particularly marriage. Not everybody lived up to that, but a huge number of people did. When you don't teach men to protect women, you get men who will victimize women. And when you don't teach women that they ought to cherish men who are responsible and good, all you end up doing is incentivizing bad male behavior. The feminist movement was not wrong when they said men are acting like pigs. They were wrong when they said women also ought to act like pigs and that this is a solution to our problem. The left destroyed traditional...
Damn. I noted libertarian Ben Shapiro blaming women for having too many babies. Didn't want to be impregnated? Shouldn't have gone out in that short skirt. Direct quote from Ben Shapiro, probably. It's true. When I'm not on stream, I just wallow in my mud pit. Anyway, this is a pretty devastating piece of info to come out from the Supreme Court. And my guess is it's leaking early because of how devastating this news is likely going to be it's going to have wide-reaching implications. And frankly, I've been saying for a while now, when this news drops, that is essentially the start of midterms for establishment Democrats. Okay? That is essentially the beginning of when, the primaries will be done, and that is the time when actual campaigning for establishment Dems will begin. Because they cannot and will not offer us anything. They don't want to offer any material support to any of their constituents. Right? So for them, this is just a perfect opportunity. They don't care. Establishment Democrats don't care that millions of women will be hurt by this. They don't care. What they care about is that they will be able to give more to their donors and promise far, far less to their constituents. Okay? Your tax dollars will be funneled to tax breaks for wealthy business people across the United States. And it will be, frankly, a choice of either, well, if you don't, you could vote for the Republican, I guess, the fascist Republican, or you could vote for me, the milquetoast neoliberal who will offer you also nothing, but at the very least, I might, maybe, possibly protect your right to get an abortion. We might possibly come together to codify protections for abortion, essentially. Yeah, I'll let you have a little bit of hope as a treat, Frankly, and this is the worst part, it's going to work. It's going to work in 2022. I think that this is one of the few issues that actually mobilizes people to vote. But in 2024, y'all, I think this just digs a deeper grave for Joe Biden, who again should not be running in 2024. Absolutely should not, but all indicators are that he's going to. Could get Build Back Better passed if midterms mobilize enough Dems. I mean, let's be real. Again, if Democrats wanted to pass Build Back Better, they could. Right now. They just don't care about leveraging the pressure on Manchin or Sinema. They don't care about trying to leverage their power over those two seats. And they don't care because they don't really want to pass Build Back Better. It's not in the interest of their donors either. So, again, I don't think even if there were 60 Democrats in the Senate, I don't think Democrats would pass Build Back Better. Establishment Dems do not give a shit. We'd have another person emerge as the surprise new Manchin and new Sinema. You know? That's how this works. That's how this will go.